I don't read all the things written about me. I wasn't aware that the world thought I was so weird and bizarre.
The gates do not just open, they reveal a world that feels almost unreal, like stepping into a dream that refuses to follow the rules of reality. Behind those gates stood one of the most mysterious and talked about private estates ever created. Not just a home, not just luxury, but a kingdom built from imagination, pain, and a deep desire to escape a past that never truly felt like childhood.
They did it to try and belittle me, to try to take away my pride, but I went through the whole system with them.
This was Neverland, and what happened inside it is far more complex than what most people think, because when people talk about Michael Jackson, they usually focus on the music, the fame, the controversies, and the headlines. But very few actually understand the life he created for himself behind those walls. A life that was filled with unimaginable luxury, but also strange contradictions that made it both fascinating and unsettling at the same time. Imagine owning thousands of acres of land in California, far away from the chaos of the world. Now imagine turning that land into something that does not resemble reality at all. A private amusement park, a zoo filled with exotic animals, a train that circles your property like a storybook, a mansion designed not as a symbol of power, but as a reflection of a childlike dream. That is exactly what Neverland was. But here is the part that makes it truly interesting. Most people build luxury to show the world they have made it. Bigger houses, faster cars, expensive watches. But Neverland was not about showing off. It was about hiding. It was about creating a place where reality could not reach. And that changes everything. Because when luxury becomes an escape, it stops being just luxury. It becomes something deeper. From the outside, Neverland looked magical. Guests would arrive and be greeted by a large train station at the entrance, inspired by classic Disney designs. Music would play softly in the background. Flowers were always perfectly arranged. Even the scent in the air was carefully controlled. It felt like stepping into a fantasy. But after spending time there, many visitors noticed something unusual. The place did not feel alive in the way you would expect. Yes, there were rides. Yes, there were animals. Yes, there was beauty everywhere. But there was also silence. A kind of quiet that felt heavy, almost like the place was frozen in time. And at the center of it all was Michael Jackson. Think about this for a moment. What kind of life leads someone to build an entire amusement park for themselves? Not for business, not for profit, but for personal use. That is not normal wealth. That is emotional architecture. That is someone trying to build something that life never gave them. Michael Jackson grew up in a world that was very different from what most people experience. Fame came early. Discipline was strict. The pressure to perform never stopped. While other children were playing, he was working. While others were discovering life, he was becoming a global icon. And when you grow up like that, something inside you changes. Neverland was his way of getting that lost time back. But here is the truth that most people ignore. You cannot recreate childhood once it is gone. You can build the environment. You can design the experience. But the feeling itself does not return the same way. And that is where Neverland becomes more than just a luxury estate. It becomes a symbol of something impossible. Inside the main mansion, everything was customized. This was not a typical celebrity home filled with modern minimalism or flashy design. It felt more like a storybook. Warm lighting, classic furniture, personal art pieces, and hidden spaces that only a few people ever got to see. There was a private movie theater with plush seating and gold details designed to replicate a classic Hollywood cinema. A fully equipped recording studio where music could be created without any outside interference. Rooms filled with collectibles, toys, and items that reflected his unique personality. Every corner told a story, but those stories were not always easy to understand. Outside the mansion, the amusement park stood as one of the most iconic parts of Neverland. A full-size Ferris wheel, a carousel, bumper cars, even small roller coasters, all fully functional. But here is the detail that makes it feel almost surreal. These rides were often running without crowds, sometimes just a few guests, sometimes just him. Picture that scene clearly. A giant Ferris wheel spinning slowly under the night sky, lights glowing in the darkness, music playing softly in the background, and almost no one there. It looks magical at first, but then it starts to feel different. Because luxury like that is not just about having more. It is about experiencing things differently from everyone else. And sometimes, that difference creates distance. Now let us talk about the animals. Neverland had a private zoo that included some of the most unusual and exotic animals you could imagine. Elephants, giraffes, snakes, birds, and of course, the famous chimpanzee named Bubbles. To the public, it looked like a paradise, a place where humans and animals lived together in harmony. But when you look deeper, it raises questions. Why create such an environment? Why surround yourself with animals instead of people? The answer is not simple. Animals do not judge. They do not criticize. They do not create headlines or rumors. They simply exist, and for someone who spent their entire life under global scrutiny, that kind of presence can feel comforting. But it also highlights something else: isolation. Because the more you build a world that protects you, the more you separate yourself from reality. And that separation can grow over time. Neverland was not just large, it was massive. So big that it created a physical distance between Michael Jackson and the outside world. Security was tight. Access was controlled. Very few people could enter without permission. It was a safe space, but it was also a controlled environment. And when everything around you is controlled, life can start to feel artificial. There were staff members everywhere: chefs, security guards, caretakers, animal handlers, assistants. Everything was managed so that daily life could run smoothly without any effort from him. But here is something most people do not think about. When everyone around you works for you, relationships become complicated. There is always a layer between genuine connection and professional responsibility, and over time, that layer becomes harder to remove. Guests who visited Neverland often described a strange feeling after staying there for a while. At first, it felt magical, almost like being inside a movie. But then, something shifted. It started to feel disconnected, like the world outside did not exist. And that feeling can be both comforting and unsettling at the same time. Because humans are not meant to live completely separated from reality, even if that reality is harsh. And then came the attention. Because a place like Neverland does not stay hidden forever. The media became obsessed with it. Stories began to spread. Some were true. Some were exaggerated. Some were completely false. But all of them added to the mystery. And the more mysterious something becomes, the more people want to uncover it. Neverland slowly transformed from a private escape into a global symbol. Not just of luxury, but of something far more complicated. The headlines started changing the narrative. Investigations brought intense scrutiny. Allegations created a storm that reached every corner of the world. Suddenly, Neverland was no longer just a dreamlike sanctuary. It became controversial. It became questioned. It became something people debated endlessly. And when that happens, the magic begins to fade, because a place built on imagination cannot survive constant exposure to harsh reality. Michael Jackson himself started spending less time there. The property that once represented freedom began to feel different. The same gates that once protected him now felt like barriers. The same isolation that once felt safe began to feel heavy. And this is where the story takes a deeper turn. Because luxury, no matter how extreme, cannot protect someone from emotional reality. You can build walls. You can design environments. You can control surroundings. But you cannot fully escape yourself. That is something no amount of wealth can change. Neverland eventually became less active. The rides stopped running as often. The animals were relocated. The laughter that once echoed through the property slowly disappeared. What remained was something quieter, something almost haunting. A place that once felt alive now felt like a memory. And that is the part most people do not see. They see the headlines. They see the fame. They see the controversies. But they do not see the silence that comes after. Neverland was not just a luxury estate. It was a reflection of a person trying to create something that life had taken away. And in doing so, it became one of the most unique and misunderstood places in modern history. Even today, people are fascinated by it. They want to know what really happened inside. They want to understand the truth behind the stories. But the reality is not simple. It is not just magical. It is not just dark. It is both. Because human lives are rarely one thing. They are layered, complicated, contradictory, And Neverland is a perfect example of that. And here is where the story becomes even more haunting, because even after everything faded, Neverland did not simply disappear from people's minds. It stayed, like a symbol frozen in time. Long after Michael Jackson left the property, the image of that place continued to live in public imagination, almost like a legend that refuses to settle into one clear truth. There is something powerful about a place that reflects a person so completely. Neverland was not just designed by him, it was him in physical form. The dreams, the fears, the innocence, the control, the escape, everything existed there at the same time. And that is why it still fascinates people today. Some see it as a magical paradise that proved how far imagination can go when there are no limits. Others see it as a warning, a reminder that escaping reality for too long can come with a cost. And maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Because in the end, Neverland was never just about luxury. It was about a human being trying to build a world where pain could not follow him. And the question that lingers is simple, but difficult. Did he ever truly find that peace, or was Neverland just a beautiful illusion that could not last? And maybe that is the part that stays with people the most. Not the rides, not the animals, not even the unbelievable level of luxury, but the feeling that something deeper was always just out of reach. Because no matter how perfect a world looks on the outside, it cannot fully replace what is missing on the inside. Neverland was breathtaking, no doubt about it. But it was also a reminder that even the most extraordinary lives carry invisible weight. And in the silence that followed, one truth became impossible to ignore. Even legends like Michael Jackson were still human underneath it all. So when you think about Michael Jackson and his luxury lifestyle, do not just think about wealth. Do not just think about fame. Think about what drove him to build a place like Neverland in the first place. Think about the emotions behind it. Think about the silence behind the music. Because sometimes, the most luxurious lives are also the most complex ones. And sometimes, the most beautiful places hide the deepest stories. Now here is something to really think about. If you had unlimited money, unlimited freedom, and the ability to build your own world from scratch, would you create something like Neverland? Or would you choose something completely different? Because the answer to that question might reveal more about human nature than anything else. And that is what makes this story unforgettable.